The Lord spoke to me with his strong hand upon me, warning me not to follow the way of this people. He said, "Do not call conspiracy everything that these people call conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear, and do not dread it. The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear. He is the one you are to dread. And he will be a sanctuary, but for both houses of Israel, he will be a stone that causes men to stumble and a rock that makes them fall. And for the people of Jerusalem, he will be a trap and a snare. Many of them will stumble. They will fall and be broken. They will be snared and captured. Bind up the testimony and seal up the law among my disciples. I will wait for the Lord, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob. I will put my trust in him. Here am I and the children the Lord has given me. We are signs and symbols in Israel from the Lord Almighty, who dwells on Mount Zion. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them into gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment.
Can I interrupt? We've got a cross wire on the reading somewhere.
Not surprised. As you come to him, the living stone, rejected by men but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For in Scripture it says, "See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." Now to you who believe, this stone is precious. But to those who do not believe, the stone the builders rejected has become the capstone, and a stone that causes men to stumble and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light.
Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus said various things about being the truth and about the truth, etc. Have you heard, for example, that the truth will set you free? Yeah, that's something he said, isn't it? Now there's another saying that, oh, look at this, we are cooking with gas. Yeah, okay. Here come the readings. Can I zip through on that? Are you ready to receive? Nothing's happening. Yeah, there we go. Was that you or me? That was me. But for some reason only sometimes. Could you turn the receiver more towards? There we go, look at that. Hoi, awesome. Round of applause for the technical team. Woo! Thank you, folks, for resolving that problem, which I haven't a clue what created it. Picture somebody. I wondered if you recognized him. Anybody want to go for it? All right, thank you. There seems to be a consistent thing now between Cannington and Westfield, because at Cannington, this was also thought to look very like Confucius, which is interesting to me because it does, but it's not Confucius. It is, Carol, yes, sorry. Well, we're not altogether out. Nobody recognize him? Thank you. Yes, it's Jesus. But it's probably not Jesus as you're used to thinking about him, is it? Because when people think about Jesus, they put their own general life and features onto him. One of the very important things about Jesus, of course, we don't know what his face looked like, because it's really important that we don't, because every human face is the face of Jesus, right? In a sense, or Jesus is every human's face, or something like that. That's not today's subject, just warming us up here. So what has tended to happen in the UK in sort of over several centuries, which is just what happens in every part of the world, is we've made Jesus look like one of us. Whoever us is. Well, the white dominant male character. Yeah. So that's what we've done. We hippified him in the 60s a bit and did other things, but I just sort of thought it was an interesting idea to tease you with this picture of Jesus, because there are hundreds of thousands of Christians who would have recognized that straight away. Go on, it's Jesus. They'd have just gone for it straight away, because to them that is a very characteristic picture. If you're an East Asian Christian, very characteristic picture of Jesus. So there are hundreds of thousands who would have recognized it straight away. We didn't. So what's the truth? Well, the truth is, we're not actually totally sure of the exact racial constitution of Jesus. It's a little hard to be certain, and there it must remain. And I think there's value in that. So knowing the truth is interesting, because I had loads of pictures I could have put up and you'd go, well, that's Jesus. Not because it looks at all like him, we don't know what he looked like, but just because we're conditioned to think about Jesus a particular way. And finding out the truth, well, I think that'll have to wait to heaven when to recognize Jesus for yourself. But there are two things which we've begun to touch on. The truth sets you free, but the truth hurts. One of the things that we learn in life is never to trust somebody with a medical uniform on who says, this may hurt a little bit. Right? This may hurt a little bit means it's about to be excruciating, but we don't tell you yet. You find that bit out for yourself. And yet, why do we let medical people injure us? Sometimes quite substantially. And the answer is because we believe that they're trying to do us good, and we believe that good will come of it. So we believe that the pain will be worthwhile. Otherwise, we would never seek their help. We'd just go, no, it hurts, I'm not going. That's it. It doesn't always hurt to meet medical people, but I'm just, you're familiar with where I'm going with this. The truth can be awkward. The truth can be difficult. And this is the point that Isaiah makes with his foundation stone. Where's the stone got to? Who's got the stone? Oh, is it gone over here yet? It needs to find its way back to Mr. Dyer. Oh, you haven't? Yeah, oh, right, you see there's loads of... You haven't got to hold it yet. Well, you see, we want everybody to have a chance to hold the stone. One of the points of Isaiah's stone image that Jesus used is exactly this. The very truth that comes into the world from God to save you, you are likely to trip over. Right? Jesus is a trip hazard. And when you start unpacking how Jesus unpacked the Isaiah images about the stone and the capstone that becomes a stumbling stone, etc., it turns out that not only is Jesus the one who comes to save, but of which you fall over, but actually his message is a message quite inseparable from him. You can't have Jesus in one hand and the message of Jesus in another. Jesus and gospel are inseparable. So it turns out that the message of Isaiah, the message of God, and the message of Jesus, what Jesus has to say to us in order to save us, in order to help us, in order to heal us, in order to open up life to us, this very same message, these very same parts of the message are things which even as soon as we're hearing them, we may trip up over. 1 Peter goes on to say something else which Isaiah said, which you see also reflected in the life of Jesus. which in the Isaiah passage that Margaret read to us, it ends, "Here am I and the children God has given me." Right? So the prophet is saying, there's a message from God. It's not going to be popular. It's a bit disruptive of the way planet Earth is organized, or his world was organized. In fact, it's very disruptive of it. But I'm going to share it anyway. And there are some others, some in my school of prophets, who are going to share it with me. And here we are. He's really saying to God, I got the message. I see the cost. Me and my folk, we're going to do it. In 1 Peter, Peter picks up this image from Isaiah and Jesus' use of it and says at the end, at the beginning of our reading today, he says, "You, people of the church, are like living stones built onto the foundation stone or the cornerstone." The stone sometimes, as the image changes in the Bible, to capstone. But either way, whether it's foundation stone, cornerstone, or capstone, its function is to hold together the building. That's its function, to make the rest of the building possible and strong. And Peter says, well, you're built on the foundation, Jesus and the prophets and the truth, and now you are the new temple made out of God's living stones. And Jesus, who quoted Isaiah on this, says, "Here am I and the children God has given me." And so you are now a people of Jesus as his living stones, and you are the ones, therefore, who carry the message and the person of Jesus to others. You are therefore called out of darkness into his marvelous light, and you're calling others into the same. You are signs and symbols of the presence of God, sign and symbol of Jesus. If you were to look around church, you might embarrass each other if you did it too much. You are looking at signs and symbols of Jesus, each one here a living stone. A sign and a symbol of the message of the gospel and of the heart of God. And you are part today of this community of the children God has given to Jesus. And Jesus is saying, "Here am I, Lord, Father, and here are my children. Thank you for giving them to me. They are the sign and symbol of the truth that you have to share with the world." That's what we are as a church. That's the meaning of being a church. It's to be a sign and a symbol and a collection of signs and symbols of Jesus, of his message, of God and his grace. And the church, therefore, becomes a stone. And our message is a stone. The very thing that is sent to save gets rejected by those who are to handle it, and it becomes a trip hazard. So one of the things Westfield Church exists for, Westfield and Cannington churches exist for, the churches of Bridgewater meeting tonight 7 o'clock at St Mary's exist for, the churches of our area of Somerset exist for, and the churches of the world exist for, is to be a sign and a symbol of the truth that is Jesus. To be a stone. And the result of that is to be something that will sometimes create problems for other people and something which people will fall over and complain about. Right? Chances are, if nobody's complaining, the preacher's not preaching, the people aren't living the gospel, etc., etc., etc. Somebody's got to be complaining somewhere. They always were with Jesus. If we're not making somebody complain, we're clearly lying down under the work and not getting on with it. There's this strange truth that the very thing that is here to make us safe we are likely to fall over. I think the image as used by Jesus would go something like this. Imagine a building site, God's building site, and God has delivered on site now his chosen foundation stone, or his chosen cornerstone, or his chosen capstone. He's delivered his chosen foundation. Those who are to work with it have taken a look and gone, nah, not going to work with that one. So they've put it to one side. And on a building site, if you put a foundation stone to one side and then get on with the work, somebody is going to come to work that day in their sandals, Biff, and they are not going to have their safety boots on, and they're going to trip over it, and it's going to hurt. Yeah, he knows what I'm talking about. Ask me later, and then I can ridicule him to you, but it would be unfair to do it publicly. Oh, no, I won't. So anyway, I rather like this next picture, which is not actually going to happen. Can you just give it a squeeze or a punch or something? There it goes, which illustrates this truth perfectly, that the very thing which is there to stop you falling, there's a risk that that's the thing you fall over. The very thing that is there to make it all work and bind it all together and make it safe and secure is the very thing you may choose to have your accident with, and so forth. It's a curious thing, but it's the way of the gospel. Can we kick it on a bit? Thank you. I'm not going to go there. If you'd like a collection of biblical references using Isaiah's picture, I'm very happy to supply that later. I suspect it just can't get the receiver or something like that. No? Okay. If you could, yeah, that'll do me. I don't know if it'll react like that. No. Okay. This slide will work. I'll work with this. So, oh yes. No. There we go. If we can contrive to keep that slide up, if it doesn't, it seems to have its own mind today, which is fine, but we'll see. Okay. So Jesus is good and dangerous at the same time. God is good and dangerous. Jesus is good and dangerous. That makes Jesus' message from God good and dangerous. It makes us good and dangerous. Or trying to be good and trying to be dangerous. Committed to being good and committed to getting more dangerous. That's what occurs. It's kind of uncomfortable. But you know what? I wouldn't bother with a church or a message or a Jesus that was just like I want him to be and just like I want it to be. That believes the things I like to believe, that thinks the way I think, and it's just fine. Well, I just wouldn't bother, because what good's that going to do me? That's not going to help anything. That's just going to, put Chris Bailey's life on hold. It's just going to be a waste of time. I wouldn't bother. The only thing worth bothering with is that which is challenging in some way. Because when I look round at the world and the predicament it's in, I realize there's no good us just carrying on as we do. We're killing the planet. We're killing people by the thousand through warming climate now. We're going to kill millions if we just carry on the same. Nobody's being realistic about it at all. The people who must be realistic about it have buried their heads in the sands, from business leaders to politicians. They're just wasting the future, and we are letting them get away with it. And we shouldn't be. Right? We shouldn't be. We should be a stone that is holding out the truth and saying, the current situation is not working for anybody's life, and it's not working for the population of any country. It's not working for the population of the whole world, and it's not working for the planet. Here's the stone. It's the truth. It's an uncomfortable truth. It has lots of things because it asks you to change who you are and how you are. It asks you to change your habits and so forth. And it's all there in the teaching of Jesus. Really dangerous stuff. You see, for hundreds of years, those who first heard Jesus' message knew that the second most important commandment of all was what? to love your neighbor as yourself. They already knew that. And when somebody tested Jesus on it and he got the answer right, he said, well done, yeah, we agree. How about that? Teachers of the law, Pharisees and Jesus all on the same side. We know that. And Jesus goes on, yeah, but... And the people question him say, so if it's the second most important thing is to love my neighbor as myself, the next thing I need to know is, well, who qualifies as my neighbor? And Jesus told one of his most famous stories, usually called the parable of the Good Samaritan, in which the right people, by their inaction, leave somebody dying at a roadside. And the wrong person, who has the wrong doctrines, believes the wrong things about God, worships the wrong way, does the right thing that the supposedly right people didn't do. Instead of the inaction, acted and saw that a person in need is a person whose life I influence. If I influence it by walking past them and leaving them there, or I influence it by rescuing them, by doing something about their need, by responding. Who is the neighbor, really, asks Jesus. And they are forced to answer the person in need, or the person who helped the person in need. That's where neighbor happened. So I'll just go do the same. Have you done it? It's very simple. Just go do that. I haven't done it. And if you would say to me, yes, Chris, I've done it all my life, I'd go, liar. You haven't, either you're telling me a direct fib, or you haven't heard the story yet and understood it. And you certainly haven't heard Jesus say, I just want you to live your life for that. Just do that. Do as that person did. Interpret that into your situations. Don't walk past people in their need. You're here on the planet to help them. That's the meaning of your life. I'm not interested in anything else very much. That's the meaning of your life. That's the meaning of my life. That's what I'm doing on the planet, and that's what you're doing on the planet. It's called saving. You're supposed to do it. If you don't do it, the world's in a mess. People are left dying. Nothing gets fixed, and you remain the same instead of being changed. We often remind ourselves, perhaps we need to remind ourselves a little more often, that we are a committed, avowed, fair trade church. Let me tell you something, remind you of a phrase I sometimes use. Take Jesus shopping. Oh, it's a sentence, isn't it? Take Jesus shopping means when you go shopping, do it with Jesus, right? It's surprising what difference it makes. He's an uncomfortable person to take shopping. Let me suggest one of the reasons why. If you ever buy any food or clothing or anything else that has been grown in another country, harvested in another country, processed in another country, packaged in another country, transported through another country, has used any fossil fuels or anything created in another country, if you've ever bought pretty much anything at any supermarket in Bridgewater, you decided to be an internationalist. Because you decided with that purchase of a bit of butter or tea or flour or shoes or sweatshirt or whatever it was, you decided to affect somebody else's life with a purchase. That's why some fair trade things, though not all, are 3 or 4, sometimes 5 pence more expensive. Most fair trade things are not. But a few are that tiny bit more expensive. Now, if you really can't afford it, don't buy it. But if you can manage the extra 5 pence, imagine what happens when 5 million of us find the extra 5 pence for the fair trade goods. We changed the life of the neighbor whose face you'll never see because they live in Pakistan, or they live in Argentina, or they live in Chad, or they live in Bangladesh, or they live in Vietnam, or they live in Australia, or whatever. Right? But you chose to be an internationalist. You chose by your purchase to do something that brings you into direct contact with the lives of other people, don't walk past them. Don't go, well, they live far away. That's not our concern. It's not our government's concern either. It's not in our view when we're voting about stuff in our politics. Jesus' parable makes that person your neighbor. And so you see that his teaching is very upsetting and most inconvenient because it calls us to act different to how we might. And there's a problem because I might not do it, and I might fall over the very command that was there to help me be a decent human being, that was there to lift my life or lift my church to a better level. It was there for my good. Yeah, my neighbor benefits, but it was there for me to be human, to be real, to be a child of God. It was there for me. But I walked past on the other side. I can't tell you the number of shameful times that I've walked by on the other side. And I guess with my shopping, I walk by on the other side probably every week. Yeah? So I don't want to think about that right now. Just want to I need to get the shopping done, or I need to get it done cheaply, or I need to get it done fine. I don't want to think about it. Just what do we want this week? Quickly. I don't want the Jesus thing. Because the Jesus thing makes it complicated. And then I fall over it. I've fallen over the stone that was right there to be my foundation, and I've turned it into a tripping hazard instead. His teaching is very dangerous. His role modeling is just as bad. Right? He said, I came into the world to serve, not to be served. It's the same for you. I wash your feet, you're supposed to do the same. Right? I came into the world to serve, not to be served. You don't belong to a church to get what you can out of it. You belong to a church to serve the world. That's what it's for. Right? We don't come to church or participate in church action and activities for what we get out of it. That's not the point. The point is what we will get out if we listen and watch our role model. Listen to and watch our role model. Jesus says, you want to find life? Give up life. You want to find truth? Stop having entrenched opinions. You want to find your way forward? Serve. You want a happier, more fulfilling existence? Serve. That's going to be the most content-making, peace-making, best outcome for you. Promise, he says. If you don't listen to me, you fall over my very teaching. And you fall over what I am and what I've called you to be. Serve. You watch Jesus, how he affirms the people who need affirming. The people who were peripheral, the Samaritans, right? The people who believed the wrong things about God, worshipped in the wrong ways, behaved in ways which were not acceptable. They weren't allowed in the temple, didn't want to go anyway, etc. Right? Jesus again and again uses them as an example. Let's include them. Instead of excluding the foreigner and the person who's so different, let's include them. Let's include. Listen up. Look, these children, of course I've got time for them. Yes, I'm on a busy day. Yes, I'm tired. But we can spare 5 minutes while I just pray for them and bless them. For goodness sake, stop trying to defend me from them and them from me. They're looked down on in our culture. There will be cultures in the future, and there are already on the earth, where children are treated better. But in our culture right now, they're looked down on. And it's not very good. Women the same. See how he affirms women because they were marginalized. And see how he includes the people that were excluded. That's what being a Christian is all about. Stuff like that. I need to be doing far more of it. See the compassion of Jesus at work constantly. That's our role model. But it's dangerous to see him that way. Because it's not how I'm living. It's not how you're living. And it's upsetting to confront. And we want easy comfort, quick fixes, and our own happiness. And it's a little bit more complicated than that. Jesus, the crucified and risen, who invites us to simply be forgiven for falling over the stone. Here's the great thing about it. Paul tells us, Romans chapter 7 and onwards, that the problem has been falling over the stone for centuries. He says, because he was speaking as somebody who'd been a Pharisee, where did we go wrong? He says, this is where we went wrong. We thought that following God and pleasing God was keeping the right rules. So we kept the right rules, but we didn't please God. Because you can't please God by keeping the right rules. You can't even please God by having the right opinion. What God cares about is how you hold that opinion. The truth is not just a fact, it's a fact held in grace. Right? It's a fact held in grace, or a perception of what the facts might be. But it's held in grace or it's not true. Because God always holds everything in grace. Jesus always holds his understanding of things in grace. And therefore you are gracious to other people who see it differently. You are gracious to those who have a different opinion, and so forth. And Paul says, Jesus died on the cross to free us from the rule-bound religion to the spirit-filled religion, to the faith that is alive with the presence of God and God's nature. And it's such a pity that you guys, well, he's only talking to some of the Romans there, try to make it, well, you can't be a Christian if you do this. You can't be a Christian if you do that. You've got to follow this rule. You've got to follow that rule. Here's a law in Deuteronomy. If you don't keep it, you etc. So you are just messing up the whole thing. And he says, what we did when I was a Pharisee and so on, what were we doing? We were falling over the stone. The very thing that was there to save us, we couldn't see. The very thing that should have given us freedom was imprisoning us. The very thing that was glorious, we couldn't enjoy. We had to turn it into our rule book. And the result has been a sham. So Isaiah said, here I am concerned for the stone. And willing with the children that God has given me to be the stone. And God will send the stone in the fullness of time. And the stone that God sends will be rejected. But as 1 Peter chapter 2 shows, Jesus, the stone, the foundation stone, the capstone, the cornerstone, saying to God, here I am, and the Westfield children God has given me. They, Lord, Father, stand with me as I upset people in this world for their good. As I take difficult choices which make me unpopular so they crucify me, and as my children of Westfield sometimes make difficult choices that make them unpopular and people fall over. But Lord, remember it's because they're standing with me. And they're having a go at it. None of them get it all right. No church is made up of people who get it all right. But they are my living stones. They are my children. And they're walking with me best they can, trying, and they're paying attention. So my message would be, folks, pay attention so you don't fall over the very thing that's there to give you life. That's there to hold the thing together. Don't fall over the very thing that's there for your safety and well-being, but which might become a hazard if you ignore it. Which means constantly pay attention to Jesus. Read his teaching, look at his example, invite his Spirit to fill us, etc., etc. Constantly pay attention to Jesus. Go and do likewise, he says. Amen.